military wife is now charged with attempted first-degree homicide after her husband allegedly caught her on camera pouring bleach into his coffee maker. He says it was all to get life insurance benefits.
Yes, it is crazy that my camera doesn't work, but that's not going to stop the show today because we're going to still continue here, and the story is worth every second of this. That doesn't matter. Now, that is because the clip you saw was of an Air Force service member's wife trying to essentially make sure her husband was no longer alive over life insurance. Now, mind you, some of you guys might know this or not, but there's something called SGLI. Now, this is the Service Members Group Life Insurance. This is valued up to $500,000. And I have to say, it's a really weird, sticky situation because if they're getting divorced, which that will be discussed here very soon, essentially the wife would have to be notified via mail or somehow that she'd be taken off even during these troubling times. But it looks like she's trying to make sure she gets every penny out of this divorce. This is even so bad that he showed a clip of him testing the water and kind of showing the results of that just would lead somebody to say, you should probably think a little further, but check this out.
Whatever's in there's a lot of it.
So from that entire thing, I'm like, your bell should be ringing. You should be saying, maybe I should say something to somebody or something, and probably leave the house. He was stationed in Germany during this time, which is something to be annotated here because there's not the same infrastructure, support, police force, investigative abilities, I would say, that are familiar or the resources to tackle something like this. And the jurisdiction between on a military base and in Germany, it brings a lot of convoluted things where most people don't have to deal with those things like this. But sadly, this gentleman had to.
At the time, he lived with his wife, Melody Feliciano Johnson, and their child. The couple is now going through a divorce. According to court documents, he, quote, started noticing that his coffee was tasting bad. He continued to drink the coffee for the next 2 to 3 weeks and then ended up buying some pool chemical testing strips as the coffee continued to taste very bad to him.
Now, as you can see in these final clips here, it shows that this coffee maker is being tainted with what looks like to be like a pretty much, little kid's medicine measuring cup. There's 2 of them that are in there. So I was like, I'm not a toxicologist, but let's see what poison control says about this, because I was like, I don't think that's enough to take someone's life. Not like I would advocate for that, but there's got to be some basic research on this that probably that wouldn't be enough, and this is what the poison control says. It says, what happens if you drink bleach? When lower concentration household bleach is swallowed, irritation of the mouth, throat, and gastrointestinal tract can occur. This can result in nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. Consumption of concentrated bleach products can lead to permanent GI or gastrointestinal damage and may result in death. If someone swallows bleach, get help online at the poison control and call poison control immediately. Which, by the way, who knows what the resources were for this service member, medically speaking, near this command, if that was a case as well here, where you're kind of sitting here like, this is nuts. But that is not where the story stops. And that's because I'm going to say she got let off with what I would call, and I'm sure many of you will call, a slap on the wrist. And I think it's because, sadly, this service member reproduced with this person and essentially will have to deal with her the rest of his life. This is only a little over a month ago where Melody Feliciano Johnson was initially charged with attempted first-degree M-word and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of the lesser felony charge of adding poison or a harmful substance to a food or drink in April. And Johnson could have faced a maximum of 2 years in prison for each count. This should be noted that every time she did this, every time she's caught on camera, this would have added time on to her sentence. And as you can see, he had video camera footage of this, which I think would have been multiple times of this, which I find very scary because the solution to this problem from the judge is not much. Her attorney requested the sentence be time served, saying Johnson had already been in custody for nearly a year due to her inability to post $250,000 bond. Her sentence also included mental health treatment. I'm going to say this woman does look like a foreigner, but, you know, I understand there's a lot of service members that will marry from other countries, but I also want to go into the idea of, like, it should be known no matter where you're from, you're not trying to kill people, right? Like, that's kind of like the basic things that are out there that are kind of across the entire world, that's a bad thing. And also on top of that, don't you think that a judge set the bond to a level to make sure she probably couldn't get out, and if she really did have the resources or really wanted to, she'd find a way to do so? I believe so as well. But what's more frightening is that the husband has actually kind of advocated for her. And this is where I'm like, is this like a domestic violence type situation where he's just somehow, you know, going along with it? That's because Judge Javier Chon Lopez says, noted even though the victim, her estranged husband, Robbie Johnson, had told the court he did not want Johnson to end up in prison. So when I'm looking at this entire situation, I just have to sit here and kind of blink, like, you're like, is this really happening? But I do understand that the service member had a child with this person, and maybe there's a level of compassion that the idea would be that essentially the kid would still have a mother in their life, which, you know, I will say that is important, but, you know, would this lady teach the kid to do bad things like kill other people, you know, or have a great moral or ethical or legal, you know, guidance to make sure that they're successful in life? I don't really think so. When you look at this, because they have only offered her 2 years of probation out of this entire thing. And that is something that is very scary. And I'm just sitting here like, this is the society that we live in. This is how it works. And so this is where I also will tell service members, watch out who you marry. Don't marry the first girl that walks in the door. We know a lot of you guys find strippers and other things that you guys try and marry out in town, and we understand that's a tradition, but there's some traditions that should die and some that should continue on. And I'm not the only one freaking out over this, but also people on social media such as Coffee Black 31 says drinking it for 3 weeks after noticing it tasted funny is wild. Someone called Terminal_Gunny says, which one of you will say you can fix her? And then this person, Hayden J. Ruiz, says the years of Camelback gray water and bleach combo prepared his body for this moment. And I know this is not the first instance of something like this, but I would love to hear all of the sea stories that you guys have about this situation, because I know there are others. And what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the 2 years probation and the time served and the mental health treatment are going to be enough to justify? Or do you think this was a true attempted murder type situation? Because I think it is that, but obviously the judgment has been made. But, you know, we have our opinions on the social media courts right here. But as always, if you guys like what I cover on the channel, hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.